Check 1 2. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rylund Johnson. I'm the MLA for Yellowknife North and chair of this committee. As is our custom, before we begin any business, we will conduct a prayer, and I will ask MLA Ajericon to lead us in prayer.
Thank you. I just want to say that it's really good to come to the community of Fort Smith and pay respects to the Salt River First Nation and the Fort Smith Métis traditional homelands in this area. Also, this year, last 2 years, has been really tough on everybody with COVID, and so the prayer that I want to say is the Lord's Prayer. I want to ask you to join me, and I want to say this prayer for everybody in our communities, our families, and all my colleagues here, and the workers here, and the members of this community. I know it's been a tough 2 years, and I want to say that this prayer be for our families and our communities. Masi. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, as we forgive those who trespass against us. But lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Merci.
Thank you very much for that, Rick. So everyone feel free to come closer. We're not going to be all that formal tonight. So just so you're aware, we're conducting a public hearing on two of our committee priorities. First is a review of the Official Languages Act. We hope to see some legislative changes to the Official Languages Act, and we have been working closely with the Official Languages Commissioner, who resides here in Fort Smith. And so we are open to any feedback at all on official languages, both how they act, how the rights are working, or revitalization, what is working and doesn't work. The other priority of this committee is increasing Indigenous representation in the public service. As I'm sure many of you are aware, we have had an affirmative action program policy for over 30 years, and the GNWT has remained at about 30% Indigenous representation, despite there being a majority of Indigenous people in the territory. So the way tonight works, we will first hear any comments from anyone in the public on Official Languages Act. Just put your hand up. Feel free to provide any comments and questions to committee, and we will take all that information back, and that will inform the changes we make both to the legislation, programming GNWT currently offers, and as we go through the committees, we kind of form a report and make recommendations to government. And then we will do, after we're done official languages, anyone who wants to speak on increasing Indigenous representation in the public service can feel free to do so as well. I wanted to just provide a bit of a overview of Consensus Government 101 as a reminder. We are a committee of regular MLAs, so as I'm sure all of you are aware, after we go and elect Premier and Cabinet, we become the legislative branch of government, and then it is our job to hold the GNWT to account. So we are not here today as the GNWT. We make recommendations to the government, we approve the government's budget, we appoint the ministers, but ultimately it is our job to hold them accountable and ask questions in session and make sure they are listening to the people. And the way our committees conduct business is by traveling to all of the communities, hearing from members of the public, and then we take that back to our ministers and their staff and follow through. So before I ask anyone to present on either of those topics tonight, I will turn it over to my colleagues and ask them to introduce themselves and any opening comments they may have, beginning with our Deputy Chair, MLA Martselos.
So, MLA Martselos, I'm here. I'm the Deputy Chair for the Government Operations. And I think I was, when I go back into my first year, just a bit of background on the increasing Indigenous representation in the public service. I think I was one of the first MLAs that brought this up in the House because I felt that our Indigenous representation in the public service of the government of the Northwest Territories was not sufficient, and so therefore everybody else came on, and we are trying to make the government accountable, and we're trying to make changes to the Indigenous representation in the public service, and I look forward to the comments tonight, because it's for all of us ordinary MLAs, it's a priority, and so we want to hear what everybody has to say, and I welcome each and every one of you here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Caitlin Cleveland. I am the MLA for Cam Lake, which is a community of Yellowknife. I'm very honored to be in Fort Smith. Every time I have the opportunity to come to Fort Smith, the community is always incredibly welcoming, and I very much look forward to hearing what everybody has to share with committee today, and to learning from each of you. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Richard Jericho, and I'm the MLA for Tunda de Willity Riding. I've been in this position for about 4 months now. Came in during a by-election. Been around the north, involved in Aboriginal politics for quite a while. Been a band councillor, chief, and acting chief for KHO, and totally understand the business of GNWT government, and some of the issues that I am concerned about is the GNWT affirmative action policy. And I'm really keen on listening to what the members here have to say about that, because I have my own views, and I often think about, when we get the claims done here in the north, we're going to have self-government one day, and we're going to be in a position to really look at how we're going to be hiring our own people. And so this evening, I just want to sit back and listen and see what we could do to help. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, MLA Jericho. And then also with us today is Nigel. He is our researcher who writes all our reports, answers any of the questions we have. Cynthia is our committee clerk, who really is the boss of all of us. And then we have Vince, and Chris is somewhere. Oh, there's Vince and there's Chris, who are the technical staff at the Legislative Assembly, who broadcast all of the meetings and make sure that everything the Legislative Assembly does technically works. But with that, I'm going to open up the floor and hope someone here is brave enough to begin with any presentation or comments they would like to make to committee. And you can just put your hand up, and Vince will pass you a microphone. Awesome. Thank you. Just please use the mics, because this is also being live streamed on the Legislative Assembly pages.
I guess so. I just wanted to be clear. Are we doing languages first and then going to finish one? Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So I don't have anything on that. Other than, unfortunately, I don't see our language commissioner here. I think she resides here. And unfortunately, I don't see them.
There was a document sent out a little while ago, and it was for feedback on the languages. And I filled out my feedback, and I'm just wondering where it goes. Like, do you guys look at that? And there was a few things that I put down in there, and I was just wondering, what do you do with that information that I gave you?
Yeah, well, one of the things I just like to clarify is there's quite a few documents that have been going out on official languages. So do you know if that was something that was to our committee or to the GNWT on the review of the Official Languages Act? I guess that would be step one. If you sent it to us, we have it, and we most certainly have a record. So if you could just perhaps your name, and we could check, or if that was GNWT, then I can explain how that process works.
It's Connie Benwell from Salt River First Nation. I'm the language culture coordinator.
Okay. Hi, Connie. Thank you for joining us today. We will make sure that we have a copy of your submission and we'll review it. And all of the submissions go in our report ultimately and are presented to us that inform any ultimate recommendations.
Okay, what do you mean by official language? Like, first off, then I'll comment on something else.
Yeah, so the NWT Official Languages Act presently has 11 official languages in the Northwest Territories. 9 of those are Indigenous languages, in addition to French and English. And the Act sets out some requirements of when the GNWT has to provide services, what services they have to provide. There's some debate being had by this committee about the extent we should make there a right to be immersion schooling in Indigenous languages, what supports are needed for language speakers, as well as, unfortunately, the Official Languages Commissioner is not here tonight. She was on leave, but we have been meeting with her in her role and how to empower her. Her role is to investigate the GNWT of any complaints where they are not providing people their language rights. So that is our first topic. We're looking for feedback.
I'm kind of mixed up, but like official language, like around here, we phone somebody, government, they say Burzir. I think they're talking about something private. And I think it should be like Tanse, or what do you say? How you say hello? Yeah, like long time ago around this country, this part, Cree and Chip used to understand each other. They talk to each other. So I think that's the language they should use around here with the government people. Instead of say Burzir, and they never say Tanse or, the Chip language. So that's one official language I'd like to hear is Cree or Chip, because that's what we are. That's what we are around here. We're not French, no Frenchmen here, and especially the older people. They don't understand what Burzir means, or whether how you say it. I even get mixed up on it. So I wish that would change for one argument. I seen this on TV just now. That's why I ran over here. I'd like to comment on that. Now I'll go home.
Awesome, thank you. That is exactly the feedback we're looking for. There's nothing too small or too large. Connie, go
one
ahead.
of the comments that I made on my feedback was immersion, and how we got the French immersion going throughout the schools from kindergarten to grade 12. I'd like to see Korean Chippewan immersion going from kindergarten to grade 12, because as they're learning so much in the elementary school, and then before they could lose it, they need to carry on into the high school and make it an immersion. I know the high school principal had asked for if he would put more into the language, but the leaders turned it down. But I would like to see more put into the languages, and more money put toward that. Thank you.
Thank you. And committee members, at any time, if you want to make a comment or things, just let me know, and I'll pass you the mic. Would anyone else like to speak on any matter related to official languages, Indigenous language revitalization? Hearing none, we thank everyone for those comments, and Connie will make sure we get a copy of your previous submissions. And there will ultimately be hopefully some changes to the Act and some changes to how the GNWT operates coming forward. And pass it back to you.
Yeah, because with the day school and the residential schools that happened, and now reconciliation, I think it's time for the government to give back our languages. We want our languages back, and we want it in immersion. Thank you.
Further to what Connie just said, I think sometimes it's simple. It's as simple as we know where we've been, we know where we need to be. You guys need to help us get there with all of that. It's constantly talk in a circle about reconciliation, languages, education. It's just, heads are spinning because it's the same when there's no change. So we need to map out how that's going to happen. Those are big words that are thrown around, reconciliation. This thrown around as much as transparency. And after a while, it's just like another word until we see some action. And I'm not sure if you've heard that in your other places that you visited or I'm sure you will in the future. But I would just like to say that I think it is as simple as we've said we're going to do this. We need to get here, and how we're going to do that. It's going to take some money and some commitment. And you're right. There's a lot of resources and money and stuff that's being put into the French language programs. And that's fine. That is an official language of Canada. But all these other languages are an official language of the Northwest Territories. So we need to focus on the Northwest Territories. We seem to be able to get money for a lot of stuff. And this is going to help us, if we can get there, to peel back that onion and start to heal in a real way by understanding and being able to speak to our own history in our own language.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask a quick question. When Nunavut split away from the Northwest Territories, they actually took the Official Languages Act from the NWT and took it a step farther with the Inuit Protection Act, or Inuktitut Protection Act. And that act took it farther in that it called on Nunavut businesses to actually do, for example, signage in both of their official languages, which was English, French, and Inuktitut. And so that was a way for them to take it farther and to also invest in language revitalization. And so I'm curious if anybody cares to kind of share about how they feel about an act such as that, or what people feel is the extent to which the government should be reinforcing language revitalization in our communities. Because if our kids are learning it at school, then they need the opportunity to also practice it in our communities as well. And part of that is signage and being able to not only hear somebody answer the phone, absolutely, in their Indigenous language, but also being able to use the language around the community. So I'm wondering if anybody is comfortable speaking to that. Thank you.
Anyone want to take a crack at that?
Well, when I started with Salt River First Nation for the language and culture coordinator, I did all the signages around this building, and I would love to see more signage done for the adults to see and try to speak it and try to converse with their children. So I think we need more money for signage around the community, and I think an act like that would be great.
So building on what Connie just said, absolutely. But I think that we would have to look a little deeper if you want to involve businesses. Maybe we need some trained language ambassadors to be in our businesses, to talk with patrons coming in. I mean, not all the time, but it could be like a blitz. That's not the word I want, but something similar to that. They do it with tourism, so I'm pretty sure we could figure something out that might work with the languages and use the people in the communities. We all know our neighbors, and we would not be shy. I wouldn't be shy if she told me how to say, "Excuse me, open the door," at Kaiser store, and I think there's probably lots of people. I mean, that's a way to do it, and actually the young kids at the school as well could share what they're learning in the business. But just signage, it needs to go further than that, because we need to understand what those are. And lofty to talk about this stuff, but our schools are doing a lot more than just learning. They're responsible for doing social work, they're feeding kids, they're nurturing them, they're doing a lot of things that are outside of probably what they were taught to do. And I think that it's great we're going to make change, but we need something attainable, and we need to put some money behind it. We seem to be robbing Peter to pay Paul for stuff. If we called it tourism, there'd be all kinds of money for it. Down here anyways. But I don't see a lineup of people coming. But those classrooms are full here. So, yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any further comments to make on official languages? With that, I will move to the next committee priority, which we are seeking input from the public on, which is I can speak up.
Are we on to hiring now?
What was that?
Are we on to government hiring?
Yeah, with that, I will turn it over to government hiring, and you can have the floor.
Okay. I made some notes so I don't forget. I agree with you guys that there's not enough Aboriginal people in the government sector. And I agree that there's not enough I do. Right here? Okay. How is it? Okay. I agree that there's not enough Aboriginal people hired in the government. And I also agree that there's not enough people in the managerial positions. Number one, I don't agree with the way they hire nowadays. It seems like each department is doing their own hiring. And the lady behind me is from Human Resources, so she could correct me if she wants. But I think that it should go back to the old way it was. Human Resources were involved with one person from each department. Right now, it seems to me that each department is hiring, so they hire their friends, they hire people from the south, and this is happening. It's not anything new, and this is why I'm speaking up. I mean, I don't care because I'm finished working for the government. I worked for the government 31 years. I worked in a manager's position, and I did lots of hiring. So I know about hiring. It's only fair to have Human Resources as, but they should be in charge so that it's done fairly with the departments. And then you'll see that people, Aboriginal people, will be hired. Right now, there's too many people from the south being hired. And I just think that it's not right. You know, when these people are hired from the south, you got to stop and think. It's going to cost the government a lot of money. Not only do they get big bucks because they're supposedly educated, and some of these highly educated people are useless because I know I worked in the government. And when they come up, they bring their family, so their family gets free education. As soon as they find out, hey, I'm going to get some help here for my kids, they stick around till the bitter end, get a big pension, and away they go. I've seen that too, and I'm sure you guys seen it. Frida and the other fellow there, the native guy, could see. Sorry, I forgot your name. Brett.
Richard or Jericho?
Richard. Okay, Richard. Sorry. Anyway, they've seen that. So I just want to know what happened to the recruitment of Indigenous people to be in managerial positions. In the 90s, we were forced, more or less, to say, okay, who have you got in your workforce that could be trained? And when people train these people, they should do it 100%. not just hold back, because some of them do hold back. They don't want to give all their knowledge to these Native people because they're scared that they're going to be out of a job. I mean, it's just reasonable. The other thing I don't like is when you're in a position like a manager's position, you're training somebody to take your place when you go on annual or sick leave or whatever. I don't know if that's happening now, because I heard that retired people that have worked in Fort Smith, that are down south, are working from the south to cover for people that are on holidays. Why can't they pull somebody from inside their office to do that? I mean, that's what you're there for, is to train people to take your place, not just hire somebody from the south. Hey, I could retire and move south too, if that was the case when I was working, but I didn't do that. So now, I want to make sure I don't forget nothing here. I'm wondering what happened to Rocky Simpson Sr.'s motion, where he put in a motion to stop hiring for a year. That would have gave you guys some reprieval to do things right here. Now it's like you're putting the cart before the horse. You're asking us about these things, but you're still hiring. Each department's still hiring. So I'm wondering, like you guys, some of you guys were for it and some of you guys weren't. But he had a good point. And I'm surprised that his son didn't even go for it. Of course, he's in a minister's position, so you can understand that. But I'm telling you, if his grandpa was alive, he'd be giving him heck, because I know his grandpa really well. So that's one of the things. The other thing is you got to stop these people working in the south with contracts. I'd live in BC too and have a big fat contract with you guys if I had a chance to do that. So you got to stop and look at all this, because all this reflects on you people as a government. They say, well, okay, this government here is not doing anything. And a lot of people say that, but they won't say it to your face. Well, I'm the type of person that I'm straightforward, I've always been, and I'll call a spade a spade. And the other thing is, you got to remember, the Native people are always at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to jobs. They don't want them to climb up. But you know what? Remember this, the bottom of the pole holds the higher ups. Always think of that when you hire people. And I just want you to be sure that more Native people are hired. I have a couple of grandsons. I know one applied for a job. He doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs. He's really reliable. He never even got an interview. And he's Aboriginal. But that's okay. He said, nope, I don't care. He said, I can still get along on my own. But I just want to show you how people are being treated. And we didn't go to anybody to complain. I was ready to go complain, write a letter. He said, no, Mama, you don't do that. I want to get hired on my own merit. And I'm sure a lot of other Natives think the same way. They're too proud. And then you got a lot of educated and a lot of smart Natives in the Northwest Territories. There's no reason for us to go south. And if you don't have, you've got the education, you've got a college coming up, train them. Put them in training positions. You know, when I was a manager, I hired students. And some of my staff would say, oh, they won't be able to handle these kids. Hey, I said, you got to give everybody a chance. There's a first time for everything. And that's what you guys have to look at. You have to treat people like how you want to be treated when you're hiring. That's all I have to say. I just want you to make sure that when the Aboriginal people ask for jobs, you know, give them a hand and do it fairly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments from committee members? I'll turn the floor over to you.
So I've only been here in Fort Smith for, I don't know, 35, 38 years. And getting a job with the government of the Northwest Territories was like a jewel. And when you got that job, you hung on to it and you worked your way through the system. That's not happening anymore. What I've seen is a lot of the stuff that Gloria has mentioned. I don't believe we do succession planning very well. I don't believe we recruit our students, our northerners that are degreed and getting their education. We spend more time trying to romance somebody from somewhere who's never set foot to come, and we sell them on a place, and we've done it here. When they get there, there's no place to live. It's another part of the whole thing. But I believe our human resources has changed over time. I was talking to somebody that's way up there in college, for example. You know, so many people are in jobs, and then I'm going to do this job. I'm going to go over here for a year and take a transfer assignment. Oh, that's good. I think I'll go over here. One person can tie up 3 jobs. So how can somebody even at an entry level or somebody that's qualified as a manager, they can't stop what they're doing to apply on a job that they might only get for a year, dependent on if this other individual likes 2 or 3 jobs that they've done. If you don't like your job, move on. And when we retire, not we, I don't work for the government. When a government person retires, they've worked for their pension, it's time for them to get on with their life. If they have not been able to do their job in 35 years, why the hell are we dragging them back for another year to get through stuff they couldn't do in 35 years? We do that, and we pay them a lot. Even employees that have left their job, there's no succession planning. Some of what she's saying is correct. You have to train people up, and if they're keeping their knowledge, then that's a poor leadership. And the numbers at the ledge ain't so good either, by the way, looking at those. So, I mean, we are what we see. So we need to make sure that there are jobs, and one person shouldn't be able to hold up to, I don't care what color they are. And these senior folks, bringing them back to do jobs they did, we're paying them, I don't know, I'll just guess. It's probably low, $50 an hour to come and do your old job. Or you can hire 2 casuals and train them up, and maybe one of them will apply and do the job. If you have an employee that can't figure it out for 2 years and you're still bringing back the retired person, something's wrong. I don't know how they track these things, and I know that people's hands are tied when they are doing interviews, or there's a process, right? It's a matrix or something. I've never actually been interviewed by the government, so I can't speak to it. But all you got to do is be pretty good, I think, at that. But there is something to be said for boots on the ground. I know where I live. I know what this town is, versus somebody that just got out of university in Toronto that doesn't own a winter jacket, never did. That's not working for us. So it's an overall change in thinking. And the friends and family stuff, even politicians need to keep their noses out of the hiring process. That puts undue stress on people. I mean, ask anybody that's in a position, just, you shouldn't have to be looking in your back all the time to look forward to do your job. And I don't know what has to happen, if it has to go back to the way it was. We constantly do this hamster thing, and it's going to happen again with lands, and, can't get new positions. We got to make sure these other people are, I don't even think the GNWT is a place of preference to work anymore. I mean, I could be wrong. My kid, an apprentice, $21 an hour. They pay 22 at the tail at Kaiser's. Like, well, what are you trying to recruit here? Anyways, I'm sorry. That was a bit animated, but that's reserved discussion, actually.
That was fine. Thank you very much. That's exactly what we're here for. Connie, go ahead.
Yeah. I went to school. I worked my ass off to get my degree to be a teacher. And I applied, and I applied, and I applied, and I applied, and I got nowhere. I did not get a job teaching. So, and my passion was to teach our young people, and I loved working with our young people. And so the only thing that I can do was do part-time work. And then I got in as a teacher's assistant in a classroom. You know, I worked my ass off for this degree, but it was never, ever given a job. And when I applied, it was always given to somebody's friend or a white person. It's like I wasn't good enough to teach my own people. You don't know how that makes me feel. And I'm sure that a lot of people feel the same way. And they're going through the teacher's program, and they're going to come out, and they're not going to be able to get a job because of the hiring practices. It's just so unfair. And so I'm sitting on the DEA board now, and I'm trying to make a difference in that way, you know, to give our people a chance. And then they offer me a job. I'm like, no, that boat has sailed. And so, yeah, I enjoy sitting on the DEA because I'd like to have a voice and make sure that our people get hired. So it's just that the hiring practices are so unfair for our people. Thank you.
Some of my concerns, I know my husband's sitting up there, but right now he's my MLA. As a P1, under the affirmative action policy, I've had a hard time trying to secure a GWT job. And I think part of that was part of the screening process and the hiring. When did the implementation of completing an assignment become part of the hiring process even before you are interviewed? So I think that deters a lot of people from applying, from even trying to get an interview, because I'm not the smartest person on earth, but I think I'm fairly educated and smart. But I'm always stopped at that exercise that I have to complete right in the human resource office. And who looks at those? Who marks them? Who grades them? Or who scores them? And says, oh, this person should be screened out or screened in for an interview. I've always been stopped at that exercise. So that's why I was always discouraged to ever apply for another GWT job. And I'm thankful that I am able to secure a job in teaching because that's my background. I have my degree, I'm working on my master's. But now that I have that job, why would I want to leave it and go and try to get a job with GWT when I'll be screened out when I'm a P1? And when was the last time the affirmative action policy was reviewed or looked at? And who makes those decisions on who's P1, P2, etc.? So those are just some of my concerns. And if this is a committee to look at that, then I would say, can you please look at that and revamp it, review it? Especially the hiring with the exercise, the activity that you have to complete. Like, why is that there? How can someone say, well, this person has the qualifications or the competencies just from completing that exercise? And they could be qualified, have tons of experience, but because of whoever scores that exercise, they're screened out. And I don't think that's fair at all. And why that was ever implemented, like, I don't know if you're able to answer that and why that's there, and if that can be taken out. Because I think that would encourage more Indigenous applicants if they didn't have to complete that process. Because I know for me, I'm like, okay, that's it, I'm done. I will never apply for another GWT job because of that. And I know I'm qualified for a lot of the jobs that I had applied for. So my concern is the affirmative action policy and to review it. And I think this is the committee to do it. Why create another committee to review that affirmative action when I think if you're here to take concerns and bring it back to the ministers, why create another committee and have more people when you can do it right here? So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'd like to just share my experience with applying on government jobs. So my background is mining. I've been mining for 20 years, rose through the ranks, became middle management, decided to come, it's time to come home. So I come home and I'm having a hard time, or I was having a hard time applying or getting even screened in with managerial background for entry-level jobs with the GNWT. I think that's totally wrong. I apply on all these jobs now just for principle. If I do get screened in, and if I don't get the job, then I'm going to grieve it, just so it raises flags somewhere. Do you guys see those flags when people grieve jobs that they've never been chosen for?
We wouldn't see the specifics.
Yeah.
That would be HR information.
Yeah, so, I mean, I find it hard with all the experience I have, but I could apply in the private sector down south and I'll have a job over $200K a year that I come from. So I find it very difficult as a P1 just to get an interview, let alone screen in. I've had jobs where the HR has just emailed, said, job's been canceled, and that's it, and that's where it ended. So, yeah. Okay.
I forgot one thing that I'd like to mention now that I know how to work this. The college, I know that they do their own hiring, but it seems to me that people are being slipped into positions without even being advertised. There's a lot of that going on. I guess not only the college, the hospital's another place. I mean, look at the GNWT, really look at it. There's people that are being put into directors' positions, managers' positions, and it's not even advertised. Years ago, we had to advertise every position, and you guys need to go back to that. And you need, even if you have to have one representative from the Métis and the band to sit on hiring, you should do that, at least till you get more natives in the government. There's just too much buddy-buddy friends, and I could swear on a Bible on this, that are getting hired. And I don't blame that lady for not wanting to apply again if she had to go through some screening thing before you even go to a interview. We've never had that happen. You know, we may have asked for like a written summary of something went after the interview, but you interview people first. And when you look at your applications, you look at your P1s and your P2s and your people that were born in the north. That's how you screen people, plus their education. And if they are kind of low on education and you know they could do the job, hire them. How are they going to get trained? And that's what it has to go back to. If you people want to be successful, I'd advise you to do that. But if you're going to keep on this way, you're not going to get any place. You're going to still keep getting people from the south. I lived here all my life, and I go around town, and I swear to God, I don't know half of the people here because they're hired from the south. And I can honestly say that. So I just want you to be aware of that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Victor Marie. I live here all my life. I work for GNWT right now, but I'm not scared to talk against GNWT. I'm not scared to talk about anybody, anywhere. You come here and you go around Northwest Territories and you want to try to hire Native people. Aboriginal people for different positions, like my sister said. That's been continuing on for years and years, and it's still going on. When I look at it myself, the way I see things, I tell it like it is. You have a good MLA right there, Mr. Jerkin. But before him, you had a good MLA too who was fighting for the people. He was fighting for his people in resolution, Mr. Norn. But you made every effort to kick him out because he was trying to speak for his people on these kind of positions, and every position that Native people want. He spoke for the people. And the people, like Mr. Boley before him, he was an MLA. I always went to him when I wanted things done. I never went to my local MLA. I always went to Mr. Boley and told him the facts about everything, and he would address them somewhere along the line. So, like my sister said, it's still going on. Because I work for Aurora College, and I see it, and I know a person that's trying to get a steady job there, and he could do it and everything, but they just don't want to hire him because, oh, there are going to be changes in the college. Someone from Manuvik phoned down here. You have to look into those things. You know, like, you're frustrating the Native people, and you could mentor them into some of those positions. If you walk through that hospital over here tomorrow, if you got time, you'll see a lot of non-Native people there from the south, you know? And that's not only that department. It's a lot of departments. The schools, same way. I had a daughter there working in the GNWT school. She's a teacher. She quit. Too much buddy-buddy system. Hiring people who don't have the education for that job. I got granddaughters that are working there. They tell me all these things. But I'm not going to mention names or anything, but I know it's happening right now. And they're just there because they like the kids. They truly like the kids, my granddaughters and my daughter, but my daughter moved someplace else to a non-government position. So you have to, if you're going to be serious, be serious. Don't beat around the bush, you know? Because everywhere they're talking about reconciliation, this is a step in that right direction, if you want to put it that way. You listen to reconciliation, then you work to that agenda and hire these people that are good at these jobs. You know, I wanted to talk about other things. I thought there was more MLAs here. I'm not a very educated person. And you guys are all educated or higher than me. But I got a lot of education, all different kind of background. That's why I'm a survivor today. I'm 70-year-old, but I don't feel 70-year-old, and I still work. Because I like working and I like the people. You know, and there's a lot of people who could work. I know some good friends that could work, but they can't get the job because they know they're not going to be qualified or helped into that position, mentored into that position. So yes, listen to us. Listen. I could stand up here later on after the meeting and tell you what I think about all the other things. I got a lot of other agendas that I'd like to speak to, but I won't bring it to my MLA because there wouldn't be nothing done, to be honest. That's the way I feel. So it's good that you're trying. At least it looks good in people's eyes, but do something about it. Thank you.
I didn't know we were live. Sorry about the spare people. But I got a note from somebody, and I'm going to raise it. I didn't think about it, but it's a valid concern. So sometimes casuals are forced to take leave so that they do not go past a certain amount of time that would then give them the ability to become an employee and get benefits. And there's many people that have been on casual lists, working casual for years, when they're working like that, they can't get a bank loan. They can't do a lot of stuff, just like you wouldn't be able to if you guys didn't have jobs or anybody that was saying you had a steady income. We really need to look at it. And while we're looking at that, we need to have a close look at the cost and the whereabouts of relief workers. Relief workers, in my view, cost a lot of money. They access all the benefits, and I don't know if it's still a big thing, but I know there was lots of corrections workers that were living in the South, but that were still on our system. And I'm sorry, they should not be entitled to any of those benefits. If you want to work here, you live here, and you eat and play here, and you come be in our community. Otherwise, they're a consumer, not a contributor, and we have enough outside consumers. We need people to want to be here, and not just for what they can get out of us, but what they can offer. So I don't know, somebody's got to be running these numbers. I mean, somebody ran those numbers, and those numbers are frightening. I didn't really realize that, like, there's a couple people in lands. Wow, one of the biggest areas of concern right now with the devolution, and now they're going to amalgamate, and I sure hope they can get their numbers. I don't want to say numbers. The representation of the people of the Northwest Territories in those jobs. COVID, I think everybody's kind of tired of hearing that we had COVID. Yeah, we know. We all did. And people that were working in the South, I was told that a very, very senior bureaucrat in my community working in Eastern Canada because she can't find a place to live. And that's okay because we figured out how to do all that. If we're going that way and we're going to put our jobs out that it doesn't matter where you live in this country, you can do it, then I would feel pretty confident to say that we might attract some different help if that's how we're going. Let's be honest. You don't have to be here, and I don't think that's what anybody wants, so you should have to be here. And, I don't know if it's against a person's rights, but if, when you are getting interviewed, they should all be trained in it. I've never been interviewed, so I can't say, but the people from the department as well as the people from Human Resources, is there something wrong with saying, hey, you got a family of 5, are you coming alone or are you bringing your family? I don't know if that's against the law to ask that question, but it's valid because it's a revolving door and it is costing a lot of money. I don't want to belabor that point anymore, but we're doing that. We're spending money there, and we're laying people off after 4 months or whatever that is to save a few dollars. Those people live here. They're our community contributors. If we can't figure out how to do that, we're a lot worse off. And there is something to be said, you got to be able to go on. I mean, things have changed, I guess, how they advertise things, but yeah, we need a little shake-up. And I'm going back to those numbers. There's tons of policy people and researchers and all of that. They should be able to track every job, every time a casual has been laid off and brought back. There's social insurance numbers attached to it. I'm thinking there's a theme you'll find. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Would any committee members like to say anything?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say a few words, and I guess I want to recognize Victor Marie, who's the former chief here, and I had a privilege of working along with him in the past, and it's good to see Gloria Mussy. I will say hello to you, and it's as a former chief and for my community, YKDFN, it really brought back a lot of memories what you guys are telling here tonight. And one of the things that I thought maybe make a difference is when I got elected is to see how we can make improvements in our lives and our communities, because I've been on the other side. I've been on chief and council side. I sat on a review board. I sat on many, many committees as well. And even during this session here in March, I asked the question to the committee and minister as well, trying to nail down the P1s, P2s, and P3s in terms of how many, or what is the percentage in government on Aboriginal hire. And none of them could give me a straight answer. But yet GWT has a socio-economic agreement with mining companies. And in those agreements, those mining companies could tell you exactly how much hire they have for Aboriginal people, whether you're Dene, Métis, Inuit. It tells you right there in writing. So my experience in the past as well, when I applied on government jobs, including the Housing Corporation, and the high-profile management positions, and at the end, I didn't get the job. There were guys that have less qualifications sitting in key position, and I know for a fact that when they advertise a position, they already have somebody in mind. And just formality, they will screen me in, and then we'll go through the interview process, and then bang, they got to hire this guy, and they say goodbye. I've been down that road. So, you know, one of the things I did say in government when I came on board was that it's something that we're going to have to take a look at. For me, I'm glad to hear this tonight, but, you know, often I thought about listening to what people have to say in our communities. There needs to be an oversight committee, something in place so that these people like myself in the past who had potential to be in good government positions got screened out. Because there's friends of people in government that get hired. So there needs to be some kind of an oversight and that's transparent, made up probably somebody from each region from the Northwest Territories on key positions in government. That's just something that I thought about and that was brought to my attention. But overall, you know, when I think about the movement here in the Northwest Territories, we already got the Inavalu's land claims done. We got the Good Chin, Satu, Clecho, the Decho, Quechua, and Métis are not very far behind. The day is going to come yet when we need to start talking about constitutional reform, decentralization, maybe even take a look at Jim Burke's report. Because sooner or later, whether it be the next 4 years or the next 4 years thereafter, this territorial government is going to really have to take a look at that as to how we're going to start recognizing Section 35 rights of Indigenous people here in the Northwest Territories. So I think it's time that we maybe, as a government, we're going to have that discussion sooner or later. But I'm just going to say that to my colleagues that it's sooner, I'm hoping, but we need to start working with Indigenous governments. And if anything, that'd be my comments, but for sure there needs to be an oversight committee to address these issues on the affirmative action. Must be, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MLA Jaracon. Are there any further comments from the public?
Hi, I'm Julie Less, and I'm here representing the Fort Smith Métis Council. And I was asked to come tonight because as a board member, we often have complaints about people not getting government jobs. And we've heard from our membership that a lot of people just stop applying for government jobs. They no longer apply because they know they're not going to get the job. Part of it is it Ida? What Ida said is the written assignment. So a written assignment is a way of screening people out before you have to interview them. So they give you a written assignment, you do it, you don't pass it, you're screened out, they interview the other people. So I worked for the government for 30 years before I retired, and I worked as a nurse and nurse practitioner in the community. And through the years, I worked in management on and off, and I did a lot of hiring of nurses. And at one time in our health center, we had the highest per capita of local nurses. More than half of our workforce was local nurses, Indigenous nurses, not just local, but Indigenous. And there's hardly any Indigenous nurses left in the community or in the north. And at that time, we were really keen about hiring Indigenous people. And I was hired from the south. I was working in Edmonton when I was hired, but I wanted to come home. And when I said I wanted to come home, that I was from the community, they made it work. I needed more supervision and education because I hadn't worked in a remote community, but they provided that. And through my nursing career, at one point we had a nurse, I worked as a nurse educator so that we could mentor new nurses so they could stay in our communities. So we used to have at least 2 years of experience before we could work in the health center here. But we made it so that we mentored them till they were comfortable, and then we got all of these local nurses working there. And they worked all over, like they stayed for a lot of years. And we didn't have to hire people from the south as much because we had our local staff. And at some point, things changed. And when I was doing hiring, it was clear. There was P1s, P2s, P3s, and we all speak that language. We know that language, P1, P2, P3. It's not in this policy. There's no policy. There's no P1, 2, or 3 in this policy. I wondered where it had changed. And here it is. The eligible target groups are Indigenous Aboriginal persons. Is there such a thing? We no longer use the term Aboriginal. It's Indigenous or non-Indigenous. So this is somebody trying to make it work for themselves. So Indigenous Aboriginal persons, resident women, resident disabled persons, and Indigenous non-Aboriginal persons. So I remember somebody coming to me saying they're really offended by this term because there's non-Indigenous people calling themselves Indigenous. And I couldn't understand where that came from because it wasn't in the policy. When I said, no, there's no such thing. And they said, yeah, they put it in there. So it's been put into policy. So where it changed, this was in 2006. I'd like to see the stats, and I'd like to see where it started taking a dive. Because at one time, there was a lot of Indigenous people that moved up in management because we had the management development program. I was in it. And all the Indigenous people that wanted to go into management were trained at a superintendent level. So they took all of us that were here, that were local, and they trained us so we could be in management. And they hired us first. So they made it work. Somehow all of that disappeared. And now I see how they flattened the playing field by calling people Indigenous Aboriginal and Indigenous non-Aboriginal. You're either Indigenous or you're non-Indigenous. There's no Indigenous Aboriginal. And when you look at the new cultural safety training they're doing for the GWT, Aboriginal is not in there. That's no longer a term that's culturally safe. So it's Indigenous or non-Indigenous. And you as government politicians need to look at this. You need to change it. And you need to see there's no P1, 2, or 3. So when they say they don't have those stats, they probably don't because they probably stopped calling them P1s, 2s, and 3s, and they probably stopped collecting stats that way in 2006. So I would like to see, since affirmative action has started, that curve. Where did it go? Where did it work? Because I would say in the 90s, when we were into the management development program, I, as a Métis person, was given education leave so that I could get a degree, and I went on to do a master's, all through the government programs, all through my employer, because they made it work, because they put priority on hiring into making sure that we had our local resources here. So those are some things that really need to be looked at. What else do I want to say? Yeah, and just the other thing is the advertising. At one time we had a local newspaper and we had to, like Gloria said, we had to put those ads out. If there was a nursing position, it had to be in the paper for 2 weeks. Now nurses don't know. I haven't seen an ad for a nurse. I know they need nurses. I haven't seen one for probably at least 10 years, unless you go on Jobs North. You have to go online to look for jobs. And in small communities, sometimes people don't have the internet. That's why these people just show up. They just show up in our community. And where did you come from? How did you get here? What job? Like, and they get the jobs. And our local people are not getting those jobs. There has to be, and we as the Métis have approached the government about this previously, that we need a different way of advertising that makes sure our people are hired, because it comes out clear to us as a Métis council that our people are not welcome in this government. They're not being hired. Not saying they're not welcome. They are not being hired, and they're being screened out. Even when they do apply, they're screened out. And I see the in hiring people, I do see because I was asked to do a written assignment before I applied for a job, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. Just like you, I'm not doing that, because that is one of our things as Indigenous people. A lot of times there's a disadvantage in terms of putting things in writing, and again, that goes back to oral traditions and histories and stuff, but there's a clear barrier there, and even well-educated people have a hard time with that sometimes, but it just screens us out right there. So those are some things that I would like to mention to you, and we've asked before to see that graph about how many Indigenous people from the beginning in time, how many P1s, 2s, and 3s were hired, and where that graph is. We still want to see that. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I know this would take money, but like Julie said, there's mentorship programs for different departments in the GNWT. For instance, they have a mentorship program. So does the education with first-year teachers. You have a mentor who you can go to and work alongside for your first year. Why is there not mentorship programs for different departments? Whether you're an administrator or a manager, there should be mentors for those people who are applying for those jobs. And I'm not saying to hold their hand to do their job, but there should be on-the-job training. I know that used to be in the past, but it's not anymore. I know there are professional development, there are courses employees can take. But when you are wanting to take a course, well, you have to get approval, you have to make sure there's funding. I understand that. But there should be mentorship programs in each department with the GNWT, whether it be ITI, tourism, human resources, ENR, health, education. There should be mentorship programs for every department. So, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public like to comment?
So again, I'm getting messages. This could be off by 10 years, but even if it is, it's still a valid point. The point this person sent me, and for whatever reason, people are not comfortable coming forward and just kind of laying it out. But what she said was exactly, ENRTP, which is the program at the college, has never had an Indigenous instructor. In 40 years, not one graduate made it to the level of being able to teach that program. I don't know 100% if that's accurate, but if it's 30 years or even 20, but if it's 40, that's shameful. We need to really have a look at that, because our own we mimic what we see. And sometimes too, Indigenous people, we do it to ourselves. It's better if you get it somewhere else. It's not always. We need to be able to lift up our own community members. I think that's something too that we have to do amongst our band, our council, and even the community itself. Same thing is happening in the municipal office. No different than what's happening or what you guys are trying to address. But I would like somebody to look at that. I'd like an actual answer if that's a fact that it's 40 years or 30 years. Like, somebody needs to, speak to that.
I mean, we can look into it. I don't think any of us have that answer off the top of our head, or I certainly don't. Go ahead.
I just have one more thing. There's no more casual workers now. They're called relief workers. Because apparently, if you're a relief worker, this is what I heard now. I don't know if it's true because I don't work for the government anymore. But if you're a relief worker and you work, say, a week or even a day, you get all the benefits, like medical benefits and everything, even if you're not working. I don't know if that is correct, but that's what I'm hearing. So I said, when I heard that, I said, holy, I better go work for the government for a couple of days so I could have medical coverage, because now I need medical coverage. But anyway, that's something that maybe you could look at, because before they were called casual workers. And like, I think Denise mentioned that they worked 4 months and then you had to lay them off or so they didn't get all their benefits, and that wasn't fair either. Because I know that when we had casuals, I kept them on longer than 4 months, and I didn't care if they had their benefits or not because they were entitled to it. And if we could hire them after we trained them, we hired them. And there was lots of Aboriginal workers in corrections at that time. And the kids that we got were all mostly Aboriginal, very few white kids. And they relate better to Aboriginal workers. That's what I found. So, you know, I have nothing against white people, but our natives and we natives have to start getting treated a little better by the government. So I think it's only fair. Julie's right. There used to be P1, P2, P3 when we did the hiring. And I was just briefly glanced at the policy and it sure changed. So I think what you need to do is have somebody work on the policy to change it. Government can change policies left and right because I know I had to do it, you know, and you could do it to better protect people to get a job. None of this friends slipping in here and there or direct appointments, and earn your way into a job, because if you get a direct appointment, I wouldn't even take it because I didn't earn it. I think people feel more proud when you earn a job and work at it. And I think that you should really look again at having one member of the Métis and one member of the band sit on the hiring process like they used to, because that was fair. You know, you always had representative there because people like to say, oh yeah, well, this is not a P1. We know who's P1, P2 because we lived here. We know who's a 1921er and who's not. So I think you guys better look at that too when you change your policies. Thank you.
Thank you. MLA Martselos?
So just listening to some of the comments, I agree with what Gloria has been saying. Gloria was in management, and I agree with a lot of the things you've been saying, Gloria. Okay? We also have to look at equivalencies. There's a lot of people that know how to do the job, but don't have those degrees. Okay? We've heard that many times, and those people have to be able to advance in their field. The other thing I want to mention is that I agree with Richard because on a couple of things, on the oversight, because I also mentioned that in the House, there has to be an oversight for some of this stuff. Only 23% of the Northwest Territories public government of the Northwest Territories public service is Indigenous. It's a very sad situation, and even less in management. Most of my complaints at my office are, the two main complaints that I get at my office are medical travel and the hiring policies within government. Those are the two biggest complaints that I get at my office, along with housing, of course. Housing is a big issue, right? But some of the comments that were made, and you know, I know some people in this room that have degrees, and we're not even able to do their practicum at different places within this community or other communities, because we've traveled also to Inuvik, and we're going tomorrow to Fort Providence, and you know, our colleague from Fort Providence constantly gets up and makes comments about the way the hiring policy is being initiated, MLA Bonnetrouge. And then we're going into Betchico on Friday, and we're also going to be going into, I think, to Delaney, and we're coming back to do Hay River because of the flood situation. We didn't want to have public meetings there. But all your comments that were made here, including Denise and Gloria, and those are very valid comments, because those are the comments that I'm constantly hearing. There's a lot of people that are being hired that don't even know anything about the background of Indigenous people that are being hired in management, and we have a lot of very educated people here, both young and people that are in the public service that should have been advanced a long time ago, and that doesn't happen. And I agree with some of those comments that were made. And also, you know, I had comments in my office that from a couple of people that applied on jobs, and people that have worked in the workforce, either at mines for 17 or 20 years, and then all of a sudden they want to apply on a job. They are in a government job now. They want to go to do something maybe a little bit different than what they are doing, but in their field. And when they apply, even though they probably have more experience than anybody else in that position, they cancel the competition. And that's happened here a few times now. I've had that complaint, you know. So those are some of the complaints. And another thing that I had complaints about, the appeal system is wrong compared to what it used to be. People say to me that, because I've never been in government for 50 years, but some of the complaints that were said to me was that when they apply for a job, they're not allowed, they can't appeal because they don't know who, if they should be telling everybody who's got the job and then having the appeals time, and they're not telling anybody that. Okay, so you don't know who got the job, and so you don't know if you are a better candidate than the person that got the job, and so if you want to do that, you got to appeal right away, and a lot of people don't do that, so they just let it go. That is very wrong. You know, so the appeal process is not okay either. So you know, so there's always that recourse that you can't appeal. So you don't know who got the job, and all of a sudden you see this new person come in, and not even from the community, not even from the Northwest Territories, not Indigenous, has no clue about culture of our people, and they have no appeal system. This is the kind of stuff that I've been hearing ever since I got elected. So there has to be definitely some oversight. And you know, considering that we have a very educated population here. You have a lot of people young people that have gone to university, and they come back, and a lot of them don't stay because of this very fact. Then they say you don't have enough. You've got the degree, but you don't have the experience. Okay, this is what I've heard too. You know, and I've heard it from people who have just come back to the community because they stopped by at my office. And how are they going to get the experience if they're never given a chance? you know. So these are the kind of things that that I've been hearing, and so I've been a very strong advocate of change, and I think sometimes, and I've been hearing also that we have people who are retired who are still doing work from the south. Okay, in various departments. So you know, I hear what you're saying. I've heard that also, and I'm sure some of my colleagues have heard the same thing. And I'm glad you mentioned about the cultural awareness, because they're pushing that constantly, and everybody has to do it. And a lot of people felt that that people that have went to residential schools say it really bothers them when they they're forced to listen to some of this new cultural orientation that's being done. And if they don't take it, then they can't take the job. So these are the kinds of things that I've been hearing, you know, and I'm just being very honest about it, because you know, I'm a strong advocate for Indigenous hire, and especially I'm talking about Indigenous hire too. You know, we have to remember that, especially with the P1s and the P2s, but you know, most of the government of the Northwest Territories is made up of everybody else but P1s and P2s, and we all know that. Okay, I mean, I look around and I wonder how these decisions are made many times. I've questioned that many times, and I will continue to question it. But you know, and I hear what people are saying, and I know that we did have a strong health center with a lot of Indigenous people working there. And in some of these things that you're questioning, I agree with you, Julie, and also with you, of course. You know, I know that people have, you know, it's a struggle to get through school, raising children and having families, and then being turned away because they say you're not qualified, and that's got to stop. And I think there's one thing that's being put in place is that senior management will not. They're putting a cap on the senior management that they have to be at a certain point at a certain time within the public service, and they're not going to. They have to do it. So, you know, if there's anybody that's complaining with it, because I get lots of calls from the president of the Fort Smith Métis, and also from people from Salt River. Okay, because I'm worried about the community, but there's a lot of other people that come to me from all different, lots of chiefs have come to me about this stuff, and the NWT Métis Nation is concerned about that too. Okay, so with that, I just want to make sure that, you know, I know what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of the comments that were made. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, MLA Martselos. Are there any final closing comments from the public?
Yeah, I just want to make some comments that come to my mind. Is that I applied for a job once for corrections. Like I said earlier, I'm not educated, but they had training in the gym, so I went up there. There was about 18 people there, 18 trainee people. So I went there and I was going to train, and they said, no, you can't train. And I said, why? They didn't really give me an answer. But I seen all non-native people there, not white people. I'll say white people. They were all there, and they were all training, but they wouldn't accept me. I think I had more education than all those people together there with the non-native people that are in corrections. I have a lot of knowledge and traditional knowledge and sweat lodge and all these ceremonies that Native people do. I would have helped a lot of those people maybe sober up in the correction if I was there. I'm a pipe holder. I use traditional things, sweetgrass, fungus, all these things to heal, to help me. That's why I'm sober today. But then we get all these white people that are applying for position that what everybody's talking about. Once they get the position, once they come here for a couple of years, then they see how good it is in the north. So our old folks' home here is filled up by these white people. Mothers and dads, they bring them over here and put them in here, and us Native people can't get in there. Check it out. I'm not lying. These kind of things, you know, and we talked about E&R. That's true. There's no Native people training over there. We got lots of people. We got Louis Boley, who trained the people when they're this high and bring them out in the land over there. Till now they're going into these classes. They're educated by him. Those are the kind of people he should have had. Maybe Louis doesn't have a grade 10, but he's got about 100% knowledge of bush. That's the guy that needs to be kind of people we're talking about. When we don't have the education, but we have the knowledge. And he's still doing it today. He's right. Last week he was doing cultural camp here. Native little kids. He loves kids too. So he's doing it. He's old. So there's a lot of things like that relate to what we're talking about. When we talk about Native people hiring, it covers everything from residential school to hiring, to work, who you're working for, all these things. It's continuous. It's continuous through all departments. Even as a trapper in the bush where we thought we were free and everything, wardens are still there to torment us. There's so much I could talk about, but I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things I thought I better bring to your attention when Frida mentioned appeals. The way we used to do it was if a person was hired, there was a 2-week appeal period, but you had to let the person know who got the job. And then you had to wait 2 weeks before you offered them the job because they had that period to appeal. And I think you need to go back to that. I completely forgot about that part. Because there has to be an appeal period for them if they think they were unjustly hired, you know, like the person hired. And one more thing Frida mentioned was medical travel. Well, I just finished 6 years of being on the wellness committee for the hospital here. My term is up next month. That's another thing that was continuous complaint that we had was medical travel, and I'm sure Julie Green must be fed up of me because I was continually putting forth that every meeting we had that people, you know, medical travel is a big pain in the neck. And one of the things that I was fighting for was the people that are non-government get $18 a day to eat. Now, this is beside the point, so I won't go into. So how do you expect them to eat for $18 a day is what, you know, that's one of the complaints that I used to bring forth. But I'm not going to talk about that because I know this is just for hiring. But I just want you to know that those are complaints that are valid. So there has to be that process for appeals again in your policy. So please ensure that's in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say there are some things that are going right. Maybe the outcomes aren't what we want, but people are working within the rules and the policies that are designed by the government. So you have a big task, and you're going to hear complaints, and you don't hear a lot about what is right. But these people making decisions, there are neighbors, there are friends, they don't go to work every day to make a bad decision, but it feels personal when they do. I don't think it is. So there's going to be some unpopular stuff that's probably going to come out. I don't agree with Rocky Sr.'s idea that they only hire Indigenous people. Personally, I don't. And those are, no, he did. No, not a. Did he say stop hiring, period, for a year? Well, that's even worse, because we have good people that need jobs, and jobs need to get done. So I would still disagree with, stop hiring. That's, as a business guy, he knows that, and he probably knows that's going to generate some conversation. But there are some things going right. This is a government town, so we're all keenly aware of who's who in the zoo and what's happening, and half of what we hear is true, or probably maybe even less, but some things are going right. Fort Smith is a wonderful community, so if there's anybody out there in the Northwest Territories that's coming here to do a job, please plan to stay in our community, be part of it. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any final closing comments from the public? From committee members?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a couple comments. I'm just going to share my experience again. I've been to a lot of KHL assemblies, Dene Nation assemblies, Métis assemblies, up and down the valley. I know a lot of leaders by name, and I'm welcome to their homes when I come to their communities for supper. And I understand, why, we're pursuing land claims so we can continue to honor the treaties that was made. And the biggest thing is that, the Aboriginal governments or Indigenous governments are looking at self-determination, control, and as to what happens on their lands. And since the creation of the territorial government in 1967, we're 55 years old already, and we still can't get it right. What I hear from my friends up and down the valley are saying that the reason why we want to pursue our own land claims is so that we could make our own decisions and get our own money from Ottawa directly. Because the way things are going with the territorial government, the policies are made by Southern people that don't make sense to our communities. And the feeling I get when I go into the communities is that the trust is no longer there. We need to really take a look at this as a committee now and look at how we could build new relationships with Indigenous governments going forward. Because what's in place now, it's not working. So as a committee member here, I do bring a lot of experience. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying. And definitely we will make a recommendation, and I'm not sure when all that's going to come together, but I'm happy to be part of this committee to listen to your concerns. Merci.
Thank you, Rick.
I just wanted to say a very quick thank you. And I know at one point one of you apologized for being so candid, but I want to just reiterate that we're here because we want to hear what everybody has to say. And so don't apologize for your words. We absolutely appreciate how candid everyone was and the honesty, and we need to hear that because we need to be able to put your words in the report and have the words that are being shared with committee carry our report and our words to the government. And so don't ever apologize for being candid and being honest with your words, because your words are powerful. And the words that you guys share with us here make our work more meaningful and make our work valid and make our work powerful. And we are a committee who wants to work together to do good work. So I wanted to say I was honored to be able to sit here with each of you today and to listen to you. And I want to say thank you to each of you for coming and being candid and being honest with us here today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. As committee, go to communities, and sometimes no one shows up to our hearings. So I know it's a beautiful summer day, and we are all very grateful when people come and speak to us. The GNWT is a very large bureaucracy, and it's a big ship, and we are trying to steer it, but it takes time and a lot of political effort and pressure. So on behalf of committee, thank you for coming out today, and that concludes our public broadcast. At any time, you can feel free to reach out to any of us as MLAs or to reach out to our committee if you have any comments on these. And for those of you who are watching, don't hesitate to get in touch with us at any time. And you have the last word. Can you just wait for the mic, though, because we record it all.
Just because I got a text from one of our members that wanted to mention they hire casual employees, the government hires casual employees and then lays them off. And I know we had one person that was laid off 5 or 6 times, and again, couldn't get bank loans and all that stuff because they didn't have a permanent job. Local person, they hired somebody else from south to fill a position beside that, and this local person was still casual. So that is one thing that we'd like addressed, and we've brought that up before. The final thing that I wanted to ask is, what can you do about this? Like, what is the plan? You're coming around asking for information and advice or complaints or comments, I guess. But what is the process now? Like, are you going to revise this from 2006? Is there, like, what happens next?
So we are very hopeful, but that requires cooperation from the Minister of Finance, who is the Minister responsible for Human Resources, Caroline Wozniak, and the GNWT, that in the remaining year and a bit of this assembly, when we were all elected to, that we will see a new affirmative action policy. How exactly that looks, these hearings will inform that and inform our feedback. In regards to, we most certainly will look at the casual issues and get those numbers from the department, and certainly that is not at all what casual is intended to be, to get someone up to the line and then lay them off. And then ultimately committees, we write an overall report, and in that report we pass a number of motions in the Legislative Assembly. They are debated, and then we give them to the minister responsible, and they respond how they are going to implement those recommendations. So the timeline for that is we have a number of more communities we will attend, and hopefully in the fall sitting of the legislature we will have our report and those recommendations for government. So there is time to always provide further feedback. And do you sorry, can you repeat that?
Sorry, when the report is complete, is that public knowledge? Will it be sent to like the members and the constituents?
Yes, that will be done publicly. It's tabled on the floor of the legislature, and all the motions are debated on the floor of the legislature. All of our committee business is done publicly. Often the GNWT is not quite as public, but we push them to do that more publicly as well. And the government's ultimate response and how they are implementing that work is public as well. So thank you all very much. Please never hesitate to get in touch.